Hello YouTubers, my name is Frederick Lopez and you are in a new episode of The Final Cut. Today I'm going to be going over my quick thoughts and review of Insidious Chapter 3, and we'll see if it makes the final cut. Here we go. Insidious Chapter 3 is directed by Leigh Whannell. It stars Dermot Mulroney as Sean Brenner, Stephanie Scott as Quinn Brenner, Angus Sampson reprises his role as Tucker, Leigh Whannell as Specs, and then finally Lynn Shay reprises her role as Elise Rayner. Insidious Chapter 3 is a prequel set before the haunting of the Lambert family that reveals how gifted psychic Elise Rayner reluctantly agrees to use her ability to contact the dead in order to help a teenage girl who has been targeted by a dangerous supernatural entity after trying to contact her recently deceased mother. Now that is a short summary of what Insidious Chapter 3 was about. It was made in 2015, but it takes place in 2007 before Insidious Chapter 1 and 2, which takes place in the year 2010. So we get to see Elise Rayner, Lynn Shay, back as a psychic, and this is before she was killed off, before she was reintroduced to the Lambert family in the original Insidious. And James Wan directed the first two, but he failed to come back in Insidious 3 because scheduling conflicts went over with Furious 7, the Fast and Furious sequel, so he failed to come back. So we got the writer, who's also the actor for Specs, Leigh Whannell, to come in and direct. And I like it. It's a very different type of Insidious film and also brings a certain freshness to the series. I was a huge fan of the first Insidious, and Insidious 2 is a very well-crafted film as well. One of the rare sequels that is actually a good sequel after the first, but I didn't like number 2 as much as the original Insidious. Something about Insidious 2 was just a little bit boring to me, even though there was some scary moments, some jump scares, tension, suspense. Something about it didn't feel up to the level of the original Insidious. So I kind of went into Insidious Chapter 3 with an open mind, and it is one of those rare movies that's a good prequel and a good movie on its own, and also a good third part. Insidious has to be one of the strongest horror movie trilogies. They're going to make a Chapter 4 and maybe work on a 5. I hope they're great, but most of all, this could end as a trilogy. This would be a perfect trilogy for the horror movie series. The second one, even though I didn't enjoy it as much as the first, was still up to the same level, so you didn't have like a Nightmare on Elm Street where Freddy's Revenge was a big dip in quality before Dream Warriors. No, this is pretty consistent. And the writer of this also wrote the original Saw, so yeah, it's very different. You get to see the two tech guys before they're dressed up in suits. You get to see how they meet Lynn Shay's character of Elise Rayner, the sidekick. But we follow this teenage girl, and her father is Dermot Mulroney. Dermot Mulroney does a great job. I was a fan of his in The Wedding Date, the original Young Guns. He's a very sympathetic yet relatable father. He's a single father, and this girl basically seeks out Elise Rayner as a sidekick. She wants to talk to her recently deceased mother. So they're going through some growing pains, losing that part of their family. And you get to see it in the teenage girl of her not having a mother figure. You get to see Dermot Mulroney's struggle of being a single father, not knowing what to do with his job, and raising a teenage daughter. It's hard on him, not only missing the mother aspect of it, but he's also missing a wife. So you get to see his struggle in the film early on, and both their struggles, and what ultimately leads to her trying to find Elise Rayner. And Lynn Shay's character is trying to warn her. It's just like, you don't want to talk to the dead. There's certain forces that can come in when you try to do that. And that's what happens. And this movie does have some different scares. It's all like an apartment complex. There's a beginning scene where she gets injured, and oh my god, it's the best jump scare where she gets hit by a car, like all of a sudden, And there's different villains. Now, there is some references to the first two Insidious films. They're very small, but it's just really eerie. It's not exactly a family haunting entirely. This is just like complete strangers that have no relation to the monsters. It's not with the Lambert family from the original. This is a completely different story. Much of the way of like the next Karate Kid's different from the Karate Kid trilogy. And I like that. And again, following Poltergeist, it does take place in an apartment complex, so like there's a lot of parallels with the Insidious series and the original Poltergeist series. But yeah, there's just a lot of different jump scares and just eerie moments in the house. So after she's injured, she pretty much like breaks her neck and she can't walk. She's really disabled. And there's a whole bunch of jump scares, whether it be stuff through the curtains, different things with the roof, being dragged across, sleepwalking, different things like that. It's just creepy, but what makes it so convincing, she's disabled, and it creates that rear window vibe with her just being powerless with these entities after her. And the father begins to notice, and there's some crazy, well-shot sequences there. Now, does it have exactly the same pace and direction as James Wan from the first two? No, not entirely, but one thing I do like about this film, even though it's different, it doesn't build up too much, but at the same time, it's not boring, and it's not too fast. It's just the right pace, both in story, editing, and the scares. This has a very good pace. The length of the film is only 97 minutes. So it's 97 minutes, but you feel like you get the most out of this film, even though it's only 97 minutes. It's a horror film, it has everything. And again, it's PG-13. It's a very intense PG-13, well shot. Not too much with shaky cam. There is a part that gets kind of Ghost Hunters-like, Tucker and Specs, but it's not too bad. And yeah, after that, they get the help of the psychic Elise, and she tries to stop the hauntings, and it's their new plot, really. They're trying to basically possess the teenage daughter in this story, so it's almost like an Exorcist type of film mixed with the other Insidiouses and Poltergeist, so there's a nice vibe there. And I like how they go into like the ghost world. It's very eerie, and you get to visit that because it was briefly explored in the previous two, but this one you really get to go into it. And they have one of the most menacing, just scary villains I've seen in a long time, the Wheezing Man. Oh my god, he is just creepy. Just guy in an oxygen mask wheezing. There's this part where the teenage daughter just has her eyes closed, very Matrix-like. It's just really eerie imagery and just scary. And I like the story. It has a very good pace again, but the scares are there, and I never feel like it's watered down. Like, I feel like they just did something completely original and just elevated the world even further than the first two. And it works as a prequel because it's nice seeing how, again, Elise Rayner meets Tucker Specs, how they get dressed up, how they start their business working together. So you see certain events that lead into the first Insidious. So you can watch Insidious Chapter 2 and this, or you could just put on Chapter 3 and then go back and watch Insidious and then Insidious Chapter 2 in the story's chronological order, and have a good vibe to it. Now, there's certain jump scares, again, that hint to Insidious, but not fully explored with the Red Demon. He might get his own movie, maybe in the next one or the one after that, I don't know. And then there's also Insidious Chapter 2's ending. Had nothing to do with this film, so I really want them to explore that. I just don't want jump scares just for the sake of it and not exploring it. They need to like tie up all the plot holes and loopholes. But overall, Insidious Chapter 3 is a very enjoyable film. Leigh Whannell coming into the director's chair is a breath of fresh air, and he's the writer, so it's nice seeing the actual writer handle the material. So it's nice because it's not like a complete stranger. You have somebody who's very intimate and knows the material very well, so he does a great job, and it feels like the other two movies, even with the absence of James Wan, who has a cameo in the film. But yeah, that is how I feel about Insidious Chapter 3. If I had to give this a score, I would give Insidious Chapter 3 a 4 out of 5, an A-, and an 8 out of 10. Insidious Chapter 3 meets one of my highest recommendations, and if you're in the mood for a marathon, whether it be any day or even Halloween, check out the Insidious trilogy. It's very well crafted, and it's rare that you have not only a good horror film, but one that has at least 2 good sequels, if not one. So, like, yeah, this series is very well made, and I can't wait for Chapter 4. I'm kind of skeptical because I'm like, this is such a good ending for a trilogy, but if the next couple of ones can have the same quality of the earlier films and not go down the franchise route or just straight to DVD route, then we'll be fine. But yeah, Insidious Chapter 3 definitely makes the final cut. It's one of my favorite horror movies of the past couple of years, and is much better than the Poltergeist remake, so yeah, that is my thoughts and review of Insidious Chapter 3. If you haven't seen Insidious Chapter 3, check it out. If you have, let me know what you think about Insidious Chapter 3. What did you think of this film? What's your favorite Insidious? And yeah, that is all for this episode of The Final Cut. I highly recommend Insidious Chapter 3. And that is all today. Feel free to check out my channel if you like this video. Click the like button, hit subscribe, comment, check out my other work. And upcoming on the Frederick Lopez channel, I'm going to be having a review of my Hidden Gems segment of Once Bitten starring Jim Carrey. Anyway, that does it for the Insidious trilogy for now. And yeah, thank you for watching.